Hello, I'm Erik Bichard from Realworth. We are a social orientated business. We specialize in social value in the built environment sector. For this session, I've been asked to answer a series of questions for those of you who are interested in starting up a new business, and where you are minded to have pro-social or social enterprise tendencies. And that's very much our experience. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Realworth, and then go on to talk about some of the issues that we faced when we were setting up the business. So first, the origins of Realworth. It was co-founded, the company, by myself and my business partner, Phil Hyam. Phil and I met each other many years ago, some 30 years ago in Hong Kong. We were both out there for work. I was an environmental impact assessment specialist, and he was working for companies that were establishing major development around the world. He's a chartered surveyor. My background is in impact assessment and management, and so my qualifications are environmental biology and urban and regional planning, amongst others. But my interest had always been in trying to understand how development affected the environment and people, and to try to avoid the mistakes that we repeatedly make. And Phil, from his point of view, saw at the cutting edge, if you like, as construction was put into the ground and built up, and how that was used. He shared the same frustrations as me. And the problem's always this, that people always accept the concept of sustainable development, but then they always say they, of course, will build it into the next project. But unfortunately for this project, it's just too expensive. And so I started to think about this much more carefully when I became an academic. I was a consultant for a considerable part of my career. And I went into academia to give myself the chance to think this through. What could we do to try to avoid this idea that nothing ever happened because good happened because it was too expensive? And that's when I came across, because of my work with the FRC group. Some of you who live in and around Liverpool know Bulky Bob's as part of that group, a social enterprise devoted to bringing long-term unemployed back into work, and to ending furniture poverty. Those are the social missions of the FRC group. And the FRC group has always used social return on investment as the mechanism to make decisions and to communicate the social value that they create. And I thought, as an academic, why couldn't we do that? Borrow some of those concepts and put them into the built environment process, mainstream it into the process, so that when you're thinking of building a building or a scheme, that social value is always the top of your list, and you've got a way of measuring it. So that was the basis of the business. Phil bought into it pretty much straight away over a fateful night in a Mexican restaurant. And he decided that it would be very worthwhile to join forces. And that's what we did. So in September 2016, we formed Realworth. Brief technical note about how we form. Normally, if you want to form a social enterprise, you would form something like a CIC or a company limited by guarantee. And that means that the wealth that you create is protected. It's always retained. And if you do want to fold the company, it needs to go that any retained wealth needs to go and assets need to go into a similar formulated company. Now, our idea was a bit different. We wanted a mainstream social value in the built environment, and our vision and strategy was to become so good at what we did that a mainstream company would buy us, and that they would take that on and create a subset of their own company, showing the sector that this was the way to go, and that this wasn't a niche idea or a good to have. It was essential for any business to consider pro-social, the introduction of pro-social elements into their development strategies. So that meant we couldn't form as a classic social enterprise because a mainstream company would then not be allowed to buy us. So what we did was Phil was acting as a single practitioner operator at the time. So we just took over the shell of his company, which was a straightforward private company registered in Companies House, and just simply changed the name of the company, which of course you're quite allowed to do. So that's how that happened, and that will now allow us, when the time comes, to be able to sell on the company as a going concern to anybody who's interested. It might be that a social enterprise takes us on, but at least we have the flexibility to be able to do that. So I thought some of you might be interested in that. So that's the overview of the company. Our services are effectively the evaluation and assessment of how the built environment improves people's lives. And we do that against 7 different factors, including health, that includes mental health, the reduction of crime, the ability to improve well-being, the improvement of skills, new and better jobs, the exposure of more and better quality green space, and the increase in disposable income because of lower living costs and occupation costs. Those are our main objectives, and we can assess that in qualitative terms and also in quantitative terms. In other words, we can put a monetary value to the improvement on people's lives, so that we can produce a report that says for every pound that's been invested in this scheme, the wider society gets X pounds back. And that's a very important argument to be able to have, because it addresses that issue I talked about right at the beginning, which is we can't afford to do this. Well, you know, with the evidence that we produce, it's obvious that we can't afford not to invest in better development and sustainable development, because the cost to society and the immediate environs, the communities that live around, far outweigh the small profits that you make from building. And if some of you are saying, well, why should developers worry about that? Well, these days, most significant development occurs in a private-public partnership of some sort or other. And so the public sector are more and more demanding that if permission is given or land is given over, that the constituents of the area that have to live with that development really need some guarantees that some good is going to come to them from this, and that their area isn't going to be exploited. And that's why this idea is gaining traction all the time. So I could go on, but I think some of you would be more interested in the mechanics of what we do. And so I'll focus on that next. One question I was asked is, how did we find the right people for our business? Well, for the first few years, it was just me and Phil. That's pretty common. And some of you going through this now will know this, that you're kind of on your own for a while, that you have to build up a reasonable amount of what we call pipeline, the expected income over time, before you can be certain that if you offer somebody a job, that you will be able to maintain that job. It's not great to have a glut of work, offer somebody a job, and then a few months later say, oh, I'm really sorry, but the work's dried up, we're going to have to let you go. So we didn't feel that was right to do, and we are opposed to limited hours contracts. And so, yeah, we shouldered that for a while. After that, a lot of the people that we attracted into the business came through the university route. So a lot of my contacts, asking different people in different departments if they knew of undergraduates and graduates who are interested in this area. And that's borne some fruit for us. One of the people who's working for us is the daughter of a family friend. That's not unheard of. She did get a first from Liverpool in her degree, so she was very well qualified, and it's worked out very well, I have to say. So you can get people from all over the place. I would say that our next recruit is probably going to come from an advert in LinkedIn, because that's becoming a really good route to get highly qualified people. And we've got quite a good following on LinkedIn now, and so word of mouth is very useful through that sort of network. We've had as many as 6 people working at any one time in the company, as well as many associates, single traders who are specialists in health or crime or well-being, who we might bring in for particular projects on a contractual basis. And that's how we staff our firm. In terms of management structure, Phil is the half of the partnership that looks after that side of things. I tend to be more on the technical side. We've taken on the right amount of advisory services. We've got an accountant, we've got an HR advisor, we have legal advice to call upon if we need it, such as things like copywriting and registering logos and things like that. We've done all of that. We are also very proud to, we think, just about to be awarded registration under the B Corp program. And Phil's managed all of that. So I would say the advice is, it's quite important that at least one of you in the business is quite focused on the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of how the business works. A lot of social businesses run into trouble because they have huge hearts and a massive social mission and a desire to improve people's lives, but they don't pay attention to the everyday issues of how the payroll's going to work, or when VAT needs to be paid, and run into trouble in that respect. The other part of the business, which is very important, is business development. And again, my experience is many social businesses forget that you've always got to be looking for the next job, and not to get caught up in the classic SME issue of doing the work that's in front of you, finishing that, and then finding you've got nothing more to do. So on the constant lookout, and we do that in many different ways. We maintain a thought leadership group for our umbrella group, Social Value UK. So these are national workshops that we put on with different topics, about 3, sometimes 4 a year. And that gains us quite a lot of profile. We're always writing and publishing, often through LinkedIn and on our website, but occasionally in other publications as well. And then now post-COVID, it'll be interesting to see if the conference world starts opening up again. We picked up some major work, including work we're doing with Transport for London at the moment, because I was invited to speak at a conference in Rotterdam and was on the same platform as the Transport for London client. who I got talking to, and eventually it ended up in being invited to tender, and then winning that tender to work with them. So very important to network. I would say broadly, those are the important issues I would sort of highlight in terms of management, organization, and how you organize yourselves. The next issue I was asked to talk about really is, how do you get from an idea to actually putting it into action, and it actually being commercially successful? And that was quite an interesting process. So as I mentioned, I'd worked primarily as a sustainability consultant, mostly in the private sector, although I did work 10 years for an organization that was founded by the Cooperative Bank, and got a lot of experience there, especially on the social side of things, because of the bank's ethical outlook and its interest in that organization which I led, advising other businesses on how to be profitable and ethical at the same time. So that was good. That was good experience. So there I was as an academic, asking myself, how do we get people to change their minds? Obviously, to many, but it dawned on me a bit late, that if you talk about money to people who only care about money, at least you're in a conversation. Whereas if you exhort them to be better human beings, that doesn't always pan out. In fact, it rarely pans out. So social return on investment, great idea. You're talking money to money in that case, but how do you commercialize that? How would that work? And we got a bit of a break, and it was through our umbrella organization, which I've mentioned already, Social Value UK. So one of the people who worked in that organization had, through family ties, links with a large developer. And at a dinner party, would you believe, they got into a conversation where the developer was saying, I really wish we could find someone who knew about social value in our sector. And of course, the reply was, oh, I know somebody who's working in that field. And after a fair amount of time and a commercial research job that I did as a professor, that relationship started to bear fruit, and that gave us the confidence to form the company, because we were led to believe at that point that the developer was interested in doing a lot more work with us. Now, in the fullness of time, that did happen. But in the shorter period, after I quit a perfectly good professorial chair job to form a small company, it didn't actually materialize in the way we thought. And there was a uh-oh moment there, saying, what have we done? We thought we were going to get all this work, and it hasn't come about. So that would be my next piece of advice, which is, don't count your chickens until they hatch. People will promise you things, but they don't necessarily come about. So try to make decisions based on certainties. Having said that, we were lucky because that company we were working with, while they weren't giving us as much work as we thought, were also talking us up in different circles. And we started picking up some projects, a really nice research project for a law firm, of all things, which is not something we would have predicted. Another developer, friendly to our developer, heard about us through them and has taken us on, has been working with us ever since. And it started to build from there. So that was our launch pad, but it wasn't without a lot of effort in trying to establish who we were, what we were selling, what services would resonate best with different kinds of sectors and clients. So the next point I want to make is, you should plan and get your business plan together. Certainly have a clear idea of where your client base is and where your services are going to land. But I can tell you this may not be terribly encouraging for that process. We were off the mark in our initial business plan. We thought we would be working for the social housing sector and doing a lot of evaluation work. In other words, they would build a scheme that they would ask us to tell them how much social value they created. That has never happened, never mind limited in limited amounts. The social housing sector, for various reasons I haven't got time to go into, has not really been interested in our services. You would have thought they would be the ideal group, but apparently not. And in terms of evaluation, we very rarely do that. Most of our work is in the predictive side of things. People want to know when they're thinking about development at the design stage, what could we put into this development that would make people's lives better? And so that's the sort of stuff we've been doing a lot, and certainly with many, many different developers at the bid stage, at the design stage, and the planning stage. And then now, years into our work, at the post-occupation stage, we're finally getting into what we thought we'd be doing, which is evaluating those features and uses that we've recommended and seeing how that affects people's lives. That's really good. So we've stuck to our guns, but it's taken a while for it to unwind. And in the meantime, you know, we've had some very good work. The next thing I would say, and this is getting into the last element that I've been asked to talk about, which is the highs and lows of our business. We've had some pretty good profile, and that's quite important. So we worked and were the social value advisors for Everton Football Club, who some of you will know is moving to a new stadium, which is just starting to emerge at the moment. And regardless of the issues to do with the location, most of our work was what happens to the deprived area that you used to be in after you moved to your new stadium. And the club was very concerned about that. And so a lot of our work had to do with the social value associated with the developments going in there, and also the growth of their community investment vehicle, Everton in the Community. So that was good, a good profile for us, and fulfilling work as well. I mentioned Transport for London. So we've been involved in helping Transport for London, a public company who wants to produce development for the good of the people, to help developers to understand how that works in practice. And we're also working with their commercial side, all the 5,000 units you see under railway arches and in stations. And that's really helped to spread our name as well. And there's other projects I would mention. But I would say that in terms of highs and lows, yeah, I mean, a low point is always when you're worried about where the next job is going to come from. And we had plenty of moments like that early on. You just have to stick to your guns. You have to believe and just talk to people. I mentioned, you know, writing pieces, going out and meeting people, speaking at different places. There's no replacement for making sure people know about you. And even to this day, and Real Worth is pretty much established in the sector as one of the leading companies in this area now. It's still the case that a lot of the built environment sector have never heard of us after all this time. It's just relentless, I'm afraid, and you just have to stick to it. And it gets a bit mind-numbing sometimes, thinking up yet new ways of trying to get people to know that you are here and that you can do a great job for them. I would, you know, for every job we thought we would get and haven't got, I have to say it's been matched by highs of actually nailing something that you stuck to your guns on, that you convinced the client they needed, and they saw the light and took you on and thanked you for it afterwards. There's nothing quite like that feeling. Absolutely not. It's just a magic feeling, because this is what you're here to do. And to be able to persuade people to put their trust in you, and then find that they are really grateful to you for bringing your idea to them, is a wonderful feeling. And I don't think it's anything quite like that that I've ever experienced. So it's worth looking forward to those moments when you're filling out the paperwork, or going out when you really don't want to talk to yet another prospective client. That's the moment you live for, because ultimately we're here to make a difference. At Real Worth anyway. And when you can see the difference that you make, it makes it all worthwhile. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into our work. I'm sure it hasn't covered half of the things that you've been thinking of, but by all means, get in touch and ask some more questions if you feel you need to. Thank you.